Hello and welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we are reviewing Nope. Two siblings who run a California horse ranch discover something wonderful and sinister in the skies above, while the owner of an adjacent theme park tries to profit from the mysterious otherworldly phenomenon. Directed by Jordan Peele, Nope stars Daniel Kaluuya, Keke Palmer, Yeun, and Brandon Perea. So Jeffrey, what did you think about Nope?
So we should say we consider this a spoiler-free review, but we will try to casually and intelligently but vaguely reference things that happen later in the film. Just like most of our reviews, I think this is best viewed after you've seen the film. We won't spoil the film, but we're going to talk a lot about what it means, so it may mean more to you if you have actually seen the film. So I just want to put that out there. So we have to start with Jordan Peele. It's really hard to explain what an explosion Get Out was when it came out. I think it was in 2017. And that film was not only a cultural sensation, a cultural phenomenon, that was almost kind of like the rebirth of horror in some way, you know. And I don't think horror had been lagging from that point, but it had maybe been lagging from a mainstream perspective. And then Get Out was a huge hit. It was nominated for all these Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director. It won Best Screenplay. These are things that horror fans never dreamed of, because I'm a horror fan and these films never get nominated for anything. So it was really cool to see that. And the film was so tightly written. It had such like this airtight metaphor that so easily kind of found its way into these situations that were full of terror in the film and were so suspenseful and so interesting and also so funny at times. Very tightly written film with a very tight metaphor that was really interesting. And then he made Us, which is a movie that I guess somehow on film Twitter, I don't really know where this happened, but somehow this became a film that was really mixed, even though it was really well reviewed. And everyone I know likes it, and maybe I'm just on an island by myself, but I thought Us was fantastic. I thought it was incredibly ambitious, and there are, like, as you're leaving the theater and you start thinking about semantics of things, Us falls apart in some areas, but I'm a lot less interested in how did this person get from A to B than I'm interested in the craft from moment to moment. What is this filmmaker trying to tell me, and how well did they think out their idea? And I think Us delivers that in spades. And that's fairly true of Nope. Nope is a different film from both of those films. I think Nope is as influenced and as wearing its influences on its sleeves as those other two films, maybe even more so. But I think that there's so much to like about it. I think that there's a lot that can be deceivingly simple on the surface with Nope. There's a lot of things that you can miss on a first viewing. It can seem slow when it's really throwing all of these intricate and interesting details at you that have a payoff that you may not realize until you're driving home and you go, oh, there's a lot of great things in this movie.
Yeah, so continuing on Jordan Peele, because I do want to talk a little bit more about him in the sense of, I feel like he's one of these directors who's actually doing a lot of original content nowadays in terms of film. And it's one of the things I really appreciate about his movies is that I feel like I'm going out and experiencing something I haven't experienced before. And I don't think Nope is any different in that case. There's themes in this movie that really deal with respecting other life, and whether it's alien life or life that already exists here on Earth. And I think that's a really big theme in this movie. So I really appreciate how he's taking his films in a creative and original direction. Going from there, in terms of Nope, I wouldn't say I absolutely was obsessed with this movie, but I really love this movie. And there's certain things about it in terms of the writing, the acting, the cinematography in this film I thought was absolutely stunning. One of the things I haven't quite gotten down yet is how he shot these night scenes, because the exposure of them is just so magnificent, of how you see the skies and the land, and they're almost similarly exposed. And beyond that, I would say the rest of the film looks just as stunning as well. The cinematography is gorgeous. It also is funny how it plays a little bit of a role in terms of the plot of this movie. So there's this guy who's a cinematographer.
Love this guy, by the way.
That the main two characters kind of try to come in to get this shot, or Keke Palmer's character really takes an effort to get him here, so that way he could get this spaceship that is floating through the clouds.
I said to you when the movie ended that this is the most stressful movie I've ever seen about getting the shot.
It really is. And it has such a great payoff at the end. There's little details in this film, like a quarter that comes back. If you've seen the film, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. But the way these little details come back in ways that I did not expect at all, I thought was brilliant and so well done and so poignant as well.
Yeah, Jordan Peele, I think, is really good at that. Probably the best example of that is with Get Out, but that's true of Us, it's true of Nope, is he doesn't just kind of like make a story and it just goes from scene to scene. He makes sure he has all of these details to tie it together that when you watch it a second and third time, you say, oh, that makes a lot of thematic sense, well, why that was there. I want to talk a little bit about the camera work. I think Jordan Peele is almost really underrated with how he uses the camera because he uses it very intelligently and sometimes very subtly. It's a great scene. It's probably the only scene of outright horror in the entire movie. And it has to do with a kid sitting under a table where a monkey is doing something really awful. But that scene is shot from a POV for the most part. And you can see just off screen, you can't see what's happening. You can just picture just off screen the awful thing that's happening. And it does so much in terms of building suspense.
Yeah, and I agree with that when it comes to this spaceship in the sky as well. There's things about that spaceship that end up affecting other characters in the film. One of them is Steve Yeun's character. And we get visuals of what's happening with these people at a specific moment in the film. But the film doesn't do so much as to show you what exactly is happening. And there's wonderful eerily things that happen after that scene occurs back on the ranch at their house. And some things are kind of, some items are falling on the property. Yeah. It's very creepy, very eerily done. I love how that's another, instance where Jordan Peele takes something that you could graphically show on screen if you wanted to, but he's choosing not to, specifically for the purpose of making it feel tense. There's also this wonderful scene that takes place in the barn towards the beginning of the movie.
It's kind of a fake out.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fake out, and I love that moment particularly because it's not only just a fake out, but it's a fake out in the type of movie that it's going to be.
That's a perfect point. I was just about to say that. I was like, this is the movie you think it's going to be, and then it morphs into something completely different, which we're not going to spoil exactly what I think it's fair to say Alien, if anyone has seen the trailer, this is an alien movie, quote unquote. What the alien ends up being, I think is kind of brilliant, actually. To my knowledge, it being framed the way that it was has never been done before in film, and thinking of it in that way makes it a very, very different film. It makes it a film that's more akin to Jaws or some kind of monster film than it does, say, like Signs or Close Encounters of the Third Kind or something like that.
So on top of the cinematography, I do want to talk about how much I loved about the practical effects in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond the visual effects of the computer-generated effects of the UFO itself, this film is very practical. All the sets are real. The locations are real. This wasn't done on a blue screen or a green screen, or you feel like you're actually there.
It was filmed on IMAX on film. I can't tell where the movie was practically shot versus where the visual effects and special effects came in, which is really cool. I mean, clearly the alien ship had to have been special effects, but there's so much that happens that blurs the line between filming and special effects that I'm really not sure, which is great. There's so many movies I watch where I can tell very clearly this was a green screen, they were filming this in a Best Buy parking lot, etc. That I don't feel that way at all about this movie. It's integrated so beautifully.
And I think this is a wonderful segue into the characters of the movie and the role that they play. Starting off with Daniel Kaluuya, he basically runs this horse farm with his father, and they train horses to act in roles in TV commercials, movies. And from this perspective, this place that his character comes from plays such a pivotal role in the movie itself and dealing with this alien spaceship thing in the sky. And I love how that is just revealed to you throughout the movie, even though you're thinking one thing and then it becomes about something else. It perfectly fits into his character and the beginning of the movie as well, which I loved how that kind of wraps around, even though you don't expect it. And then when it does happen, you're like, oh, that makes complete sense.
So he's very subdued. He's a lot more kind of sarcastic and matter-of-fact. Though his performance is so good because the camera will linger on him for so long and he's not saying anything except for a word here or there. And he's so interesting and he's so compelling with his silence, Whereas Keke Palmer is quite the opposite. She has this great kind of energy and this great kind of charisma that really permeates the screen and is the complete opposite of Daniel Kaluuya. They have this great synergy as brother and sister that really works for the film and is almost kind of a nod. The film has a lot of nods to films of the past. There's a direct reference to Shane in the opening scene. There's a reference to The Searchers. There's references to Jaws, to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But their relationship almost reminds me of Clint Eastwood in Tuco's character in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And this film has quite a bit of references to Western films, and I feel like that can't be a mistake. That in that film, Clint Eastwood maybe says like 1 or 2 words for every 50 words that Tuco says. So that reminds me a lot of Keke Palmer and Daniel Kaluuya. But the words that he says, Daniel Kaluuya says, really have some power, whether that's in comedy, whether that's in thematic heft. And more so, Keke Palmer is there to bring the comedy, to bring the energy, to kind of liven up the audience a little bit.
I think she brings so much life to this film. She's my favorite character in the movie. So she's also very much an extrovert, and he is very much an introvert. It brings this very interesting clash, which happens pretty early on in the movie, where she is late to one of these shoots that's happening on set.
This is so great. And he's avoiding saying anything at all costs.
Yes. So he's so introverted that he doesn't speak up enough at all. And then she is so extroverted where she comes to her spiel and then she kind of goes off and she's just chatting with people and he's just kind of standing there with the horse. But it's such a great introduction to her character because right from that moment you know exactly who she is and you know exactly who he is.
It really goes to how well thought out the film is. I think the film thinks about characters, it thinks about how characters will interact with situations. How do we get that interaction into a fully fledged story that makes sense? So I think we would be depriving our viewers of the essential question of what does this film mean? Because I think Jordan Peele always invites subtext, right? He starts this film with a biblical allusion that talks about spectacle. His first 2 films are very clear metaphors. Get Out is a clear metaphor for cultural appropriation. I think Us is a clear metaphor for duality. And there's all kinds of interesting details that you can delve into within those films that make sense. Is there anything that you gathered thematically from Nope that you think is worth talking about?
I think I alluded to earlier. I might have outright just said it, but respect life and to respect other beings or creatures or people, whatever have you. And you see the ramifications of that in the characters that don't. And you see the people that are kind of spared who do. It's a pretty simple theme, but I love how this movie engages with that theme. And to me, it was original and new and creative in that sense.
I think you're getting to something I like so much about the film is that I have a wildly different interpretation of what it's trying to say. And I think this is very intentional. From what I know about Jordan Peele, he tends to really give his movies to his audiences. He's like, I thought a certain thing. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but whatever you think about it is interesting enough for me, which is something I really like about filmmakers. So I think the word spectacle that starts the film with that biblical verse can't be ignored, right? And there's so much in this film that seems to point that way, whether it be the kind of stupid, unintelligent sitcom that ends in macabre, that then becomes a way for Stephen Yeun's character to make a lot of money, or whether it be Keke Palmer, as much as we love her, doing anything she possibly can to just get a picture of this alien so that she can make a lot of money. There's something here about mining our tragedy and mining our extraordinary experiences for money that I think is really interesting, especially considering this is a movie released by Universal in like 3,500 theaters, talk about spectacle. I mean, I think Jordan Peele is a smart enough guy that he understands that spectacle and intelligence could be on both hands at the same time.
And just to add, the lengths that the cinematographer character will go to get the shot himself.
Yeah.
I imagine both of our things can live in harmony here.
I think they do, and I think there's even other things. I listened to a podcast this morning that had a bunch of other ideas I'm not even mentioning here, but I think that there's a lot of really cool ideas going on in this movie, and I think there's a lot to explore. I think there's maybe years to come, maybe many viewings to come, things to talk about that are really pertinent to the way that we view cinema, the way that we live our lives. So you ready to go to grades?
Yep, I'm ready to go to grades. I actually really love this conversation. I feel like it opened up a lot of things in my mind, and I'm going to give this movie an A-. I really had a great time watching it. I probably enjoyed Get Out a little bit more than this film if we are doing comparisons in terms of Jordan Peele's slate of films. But I love the aura in this movie. There's like a sense of like a stylistic thing going on here.
It's very like kind of eerie, just like quietly eerie.
Yeah, and I loved how restrained that is. But also how impactful it is at the same time. I found myself creepy at moments. I was laughing out loud at moments. I was very tense, like in my seat at certain times. Everything that I really love about movies, as well as just how well it built its themes and its characters, was done so well in this film. So I just really enjoyed it.
I'm gonna give it a B+. So I was probably at a B when we walked out of the theater. I started thinking about it more. You know, we had this conversation. I think Jordan Peele just puts so much faith in his audience, and he puts a lot of faith in his audience to deduce what's going on, not only with the plot but thematically. I love that about him. That's something I know that I constantly like shit on Marvel movies, but like that's something that Marvel movies don't do. This is a movie that's in major release that got a fairly large budget from, you know, a filmmaker who's really compelled to make creative and new stories. And, you know, that gets so much of a bump up for me just from a starting point. But then for him to deliver, I think, in spades with how interesting this film is and how well thought out it is. And also how good it is on a visceral level. Just, you know, maybe something we didn't talk about enough is just how suspenseful it is, how interesting it is from moment to moment. It's a really fun watch. It's a movie that we could show our parents. It's a movie that we could show our siblings, and they would probably really enjoy it. It's also a movie that we could show our film nerd friends, and they would probably have a lot to talk about, a lot, you know, to stay here till 2 a.m. having drinks talking about all these great things that the movie's referencing. So anyway, all of that going on in Nope, I thought it was just pretty damn good.
All right, and that's it for our review of Nope. Nope is currently in theaters only, so be sure to go check it out. If you've seen Nope, you know, let us know in the comments. What did you think about the film? As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.